Hey, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. If you're joining us, go ahead and just let us know you're in the room. As you jump into the room, we'll start shortly. Hope everybody's doing well. Um, Obviously, well, not if you've not been looking at the news. Uh, some tragic news again today, but we'll talk about that a little bit more as you jump into the room. Please let us know that you're here. We'll give it a little bit of time too. If you're in the room, get into the room. Let us know you're here. So it's 7 o'clock, and we'll start off. Tonight, I want to introduce a couple of things, but also really have a conversation about my new book, Trust Life. But also really touch on a couple of things that are really relevant uh, in the book that I think are really relevant even in today's events that happened in Texas. If you don't know, another school shooting in Texas, a great debate here in this country around gun laws and rights, uh, and obviously the wellness of people to obviously enact such a heinous crime against children and a teacher uh, is in many cases unexplainable, but also challenging for us, I think, in this country, specifically in America, because it is now, unfortunately, a norm. And I think that today's topic around trust life, unfortunately, is more than relevant, considering when these heinous acts occur, it's difficult to trust life. It becomes extremely difficult to trust life when we are just tired and fed up, tired and disenchanted, tired and dismayed, and we just throw our hands in the air. We get to that point, right? That breaking point, to so to speak, to where we really fully just can't understand why. Like, and you can put anything you want to after the why. We just can't understand the why. Why are these heinous things continuing to happen? Why does life present these obstacles and challenges? Why? We get to a point to where there's so many whys that we're asking so often why, that when someone asks you, do you trust life? You pause because it's difficult. It can be difficult. And so today, I want to talk about the book, Trust Life. I want to talk about why I wrote it, I want to talk about a couple of topics that are kind of drove me to write this book. And I want to share a few ways in which I feel as though we can begin to trust life. We can begin to take a step in the right direction, even in the midst of hell breaking loose sometimes, even in the midst of our darkest and deepest whys. So if you're in the room, let me know, put it in the chat. Hey, Vicky, glad you're here. Glad you're here. Hopefully you're still here. If anybody else still here, just throw it in the chat. Let us know you're here. First and foremost, as before I jump into the conversation, I would like to know if you're here, what comes to mind when you think about trusting life? Like, what comes to mind when you think about the term itself, trust life? And throw it in the chat, and any other questions you might have along the way. I wrote Trust Life really from a conversation. Hey, Angie. Really from a conversation. Glad you're here too. From a conversation that I saw on Super Soul Sunday. And, if you're a fan of Oprah Winfrey, you know that she hosts a show now, Super Soul Sunday, and I look at it religiously. I love the show. I've met so many authors and writers and you name it that I've just really become fond of. And Brother David Standel-Ras was a guest of hers. He's a Benedictine monk and he's an author, has just an amazing story. But the short of it is that in the conversation that he had with Oprah Winfrey, they were having a conversation around, as he began to have a conversation around gratitude and the power of gratitude. But in this conversation, he made a comment and it struck me. Much of what he shared struck me, but this comment struck me the most because it's a comment that I had kind of been asking myself over time, but I had not really put language to it. He basically said, when we trust life, life provides us, gives us good things. And it struck me. I had to sit with that a little bit. Because the first question, that I asked was like, well, what does it mean to trust life? Right? Like what does it really mean? Because I know life gives me good things. I've been blessed. I know that, and I was kind of like, I know my life, and I've had a good life. But what does it mean to trust life then? And then life will give you good things. So I began to really investigate for myself, with myself, what it meant to trust life. And this is a little over a year ago. And I said, man, I love that term, that statement, that phrase, trust life. Because for me, I had been trusting life. I just had never, I guess, said it like that. And so out of that birth really, again, this self-investigation around what does it mean to me to trust life? What does it mean to wake up every day and no matter what happens in life, I trust it. I trust it. What does that mean? No matter what happens, if I'm breathing, if I'm awake, I'm trusting it. Because trust is a powerful word. We talk about trust a lot. People say you must earn someone's trust. Or people must earn your trust, at least. I guess that's the way you phrase it, right? You got to earn my trust, right? In one of the books I wrote a year ago, Plan B Sucks, I talk about this idea of earning trust, right? I think it's a very It's an interesting, I think, way of looking at trust, earning trust, right? And that word is so really powerful because I think most people I ask a lot, will say, yeah, definitely you have to earn my trust. And I always ask them, well, what does that entail? Like, what does that entail? Because if we associate this ideal of earning trust, then in accordance with that idea of earning trust, if I say to you, you should trust life, then how does life earn your trust? How does life earn your trust? If that's what we're doing, right? How does life earn your trust? Well, and conversely, if then you would come over to my side of things and say, hey, you can't really earn trust. You can't earn trust. You just have to give it. And trusting a person or entrusting life are two different things. But I think you have to give in both spaces, with humans and in life. You have to just give it. Now, I think the difference becomes in life, people will disappoint you. And you can gauge how much you want to trust them based on how much they've shown you. But conversely, with life, though, I think it's deeper. Life is going to give us some curveballs. Life is going to give us some valleys. It's supposed to. It's life. It's complex. It's nuanced of sorts. It's all these things that we try and figure out along the way. So then, if we separate trusting life from trusting people, we begin to look at life in a different lens because it is different. So I want to talk about trusting life in these three phases of life. I want to talk about it in these three phases: shame, fear, and love. Shame, fear, and love. And in the book Trust Life, I talk a little bit deeply about shame in the first chapter because for me, when I thought about trusting life, hey Tarsha, shout out to Tarsha, thanks for joining us. When I first thing I thought about trusting life, the first thing that came to mind was shame. And listen, we don't talk enough about shame. We did a previous live about shame. It was like the whole live was about shame, and that's not going to happen today. But that's the first thing that came to mind was shame. And the reason why is because I believe that it's difficult to trust life for us in many aspects of life because we are walking through life trying to fit this standard, this norm, this perfect ideal of who we should be in life. And when we miss or when we fall short, and we will, shame rests within us. We get this shame type of feeling. We're ashamed of what we've done. We are ashamed of what we have not become. We are ashamed that we're struggling with our finances, ashamed that the relationship failed, ashamed that the job let us go, ashamed that our home is not as nice and put to do, ashamed that our children are not doing so great in school, ashamed of so many things that the world says are the norm. But conversely, shame is something deeper, and we're going to get into what that is. The second thing that came to mind when I thought about trust life and what it means when I did this self-investigation was about fear. And I know, people talk about fear so much in leadership and life, and we talk about, some people say fear is not real, and I don't agree with that. Also, in Plan B Sucks, the book I wrote a little bit over a year ago, I talk about fear. Fear is real. Fear is very real. But I talk about fear in the manner in which we use fear. When I was talking about this idea of trusting life, I talked about how does fear play in trusting life? Because in order to trust life, apart from trusting people, trusting life, remember, if we're not doing anything around trying to make life earn our trust, if we're just trusting, then fear plays a key role, because that means that we are going to step into life knowing full well life is going to give us some curveballs. Yet, as I write in the book, fear not. Fear not. We're going to jump in that as well. We'll get there. That was the second one. The third point, though, was obviously, if you know me, it was about love. Trusting life must connect us to love. And I asked myself about, if we trust life, what does that mean about love, about self-love, about love of life? People say, ask you the question, and I don't know if anybody has asked you this question recently or lately, and do you love life? And it can be easy to say, yes, of course I love life. I love life. I love life. Like, no. That's surface. I want to go deeper. Do you love life? Because if you love life, then you trust life. If you love life, you trust life. You trust that life will give you good things, even in your darkest moment. So those are the three areas I want to tackle today. I want to talk about how shame, fear, and love, how they can actually act in cooperation to get us in a space to not trust life. But I want to talk about how we do so. I want to talk about three ways and how we begin to trust life. This is the reason why I wrote the book. This is the reason why I wrote Trust Life. So, the first is shame. In the book, I talk about the opposite of shame. The opposite of shame for me is disconnection. Let's talk about what that means. Now, you don't have to believe per se in God, but I do firmly believe we must have faith in this world, in our lives, in order for good things to truly happen. Meaning, I believe faith must be a part of who you are. Faith of a higher power, faith of something bigger than yourself, faith. For me, it is God, though, that I'm driven through my faith in God. And because of so, I began to ask the question about, why was shame so heavy in my life in certain moments? And then I would peel back that layer and ask myself, what was happening? Where was I at spiritually, emotionally? And what I found was that shame was at its greatest, deepest point in my life when I was at the greatest distance from my faith. Yes, I was disconnected. Shame had rooted itself in me at the points in which I was disconnected from my faith, disconnected from God. Bishop T.D. Jakes says it like this. He says, it's easy to go to God in convenience. It's easy to go to your faith in convenience. You hear it all the time. You see it in movies. You see it all everywhere. When people are, oh God, please get me out of this jam. God, please just cover me. Walk with me. Yeah, you know what I'm talking about. It's easy inconvenience, but the question is, are you getting connected through consistency? Consistency. Trusting life is not about convenience. It's similar to a marathon runner. I don't know if you've ever run a marathon before, but it's a long run, and And because it's a long run, you have to train. You have to be ready for a marathon. You have to get in shape. You have to get fluids in your body over a longer period of time. So your body is accustomed to sweating and that physical, exertion, but also you are hydrated such that you are able to run long distance. But if you don't do any of those things, if you don't hydrate your body and you get into a marathon and you begin to run, and because of convenience, at your convenience, you need water, it'll be too late. You see, your body must be hydrated over a period of time so that when you run the marathon, that you don't actually need the water. But you must have the water. Now, don't get it twisted. We need our faith. We need God. But what I'm trying to show you is that the difference between convenience and consistency allows us to, when we get in the moment where we want the water in the marathon, because we have been hydrating for so long, if the water is not there, we still can go. I want to make that connection for you. When we're in connection with our faith and with God, we have relationship. So when the valley comes, the valley will come. We, we don't hear that blurriness. We don't feel so overwhelmed. We have been in communication. We've been in relationship. We're connected by where in which we say we need you, God. Things may take a little time for it to unfold, but because we've been in relationship, consistency, we don't lose our minds. Trusting life is about consistency over convenience. How consistent are you in your faith? How consistent are you in your connection? Shame shows up in good form when we are disconnected and inconsistent. That's point one. Point two is about not trusting God or trusting faith. Now it's about trusting yourself. I'm gonna put somebody on blast. I don't know who you are, but whoever it is, if this is you, then listen. I want you to receive this in all goodness, right? But understand this: trusting self is the step before you can get to trusting life. If you are not accountable to you, you can't trust life. You can't trust life. Well, what do I mean? There's times in our lives where we set goals for ourselves, where we know things are going left and we should go right. We know that we should be prepping in one way, but we're doing something in another way. We know that we must do X in order to get to Y, yet and still we don't follow up and follow through. We don't attack it with consistency and intention. We don't hold ourselves accountable. And yet we want life to give us good things. If you don't hold yourself accountable, how in the hell can you even imagine that life would give you good things? The reality of it is that if we're not diligent about what and who we are and whose we are, how can life then give us good things? People talk about holding people accountable. I'm gonna hold somebody accountable. And I ask them to pause and I ask them, well, what does that really mean, holding someone accountable? If you think about and you look up what accountable means, or you look up the term to hold someone accountable, it's not really a pleasant thing, actually. But if you're talking about self-accountability, that's different. How are you holding yourself accountable in order to trust life? How are you your best you? People I hear all the time, we work with folks in all walks of life and businesses, and I hear stories, personal stories around I'm unhappy here, I'm unhappy there. This is really draining me. And you know, I always ask this question: what are you doing it for? I mean, listen, you get a lot of answers when you ask somebody, what are you doing it for? People got jobs. They say my job is making me miserable. This relationship is making me miserable. This life is making me miserable. Yet I dig in and double down on it. And yet, as we dig in and double down on these things that are making us miserable, we somehow, for some reason, illogical, I think, even more so than anything, we expect life to give us good things. Remember, Brother David Santarat said, if you trust life, it will give you good things. But if you're miserable in your life, how can life give you good things? If you're not holding yourself accountable, if you're not trusting yourself to do what you said you would do, to do what you know you should do, how, in fact, can life give you good things? The second point is I want you to trust yourself. I want you to hold yourself accountable. The third point is, and obviously this is apropos, it's right on point, right? And in order to get to this third point, you've got to trust God, right? Trust yourself. And yeah, now we can talk about trust in life. We can talk about trust in life. What does it mean to now be able to trust life? When all hell is breaking loose, when all things seem wrong, when nothing's happening in accordance to your plan, when you give and give and give and you don't receive, when you invest and invest and there's no return, when everything seems as though it is failing, though you are putting supposedly all the effort you can into it, it feels as though life is not giving you good things. How, in fact, then can you trust it? How can you trust it? Well, I think it's very simple. Yet I think we make it complex. But I'm going to tell you how simple it is. I want you to take an accounting of your life. That's the first step into being accountable. I want you to take an accounting of your life. Even though the root of the word account, I want you to account for your life. I want you to go down the list and ask yourself, is this how I want to live? Is this how I want to live in this job? Is this how I want to live in this relationship? Is this how I want to live in my friendship circle? Is this how I want to live in my faith circle? Is this how I want to live in my life period overall? Do I have joy in my life? Because I promise you, many of us are going to pause. It's difficult to trust life because, one, we're not trusting God. Not trusting, we're not having a relationship, we're not connected, we're not trusting ourselves, we're not keeping our word to ourselves. And then 3, we're not living full. We're not living full. You have to live full in order to really trust life. You have to live full in order to really trust life. You have to literally live the gift that God has put inside of you. It's people say it's hard. How life is hard. And I tell people all the time now. I say, I get where you're coming from. I get where you're coming from when you say life is hard. But I can't say life is hard anymore. Life isn't hard. Life is complex. Life is complex. But life is joy. Life is joyous. When people say life is hard, what I hear them saying is they don't trust it. I'm going to say that again. When I hear people tell me when I hear people tell me that life is hard, what I'm hearing from you is you're saying that you don't fully trust it. somewhere in there, whether it's your faith relationship, whether it's your relationship with yourself, whether it's what you're doing in life, your purpose is not being fulfilled. You're not in a place of joy, whatever it may be. There's something that's happening in your life. When you say life is hard, hard is the key word. Hard is I can't move hard. Hard is stiff, it's stern, it's not moving. Complex. It's got moving pieces. It's nuanced. It's interesting. It's intriguing. In order to trust life, you got to live a full life. You got to live full. I was in a space where I was scared of dying, and I wondered for myself personally, why are you so scared? You know you will die inevitably. Like it's going to happen. And I asked myself, why are you so scared? And the answer came to me. I wasn't scared of dying. I was scared of letting God down, that I would die not having lived full. Have you ever asked yourself why you scared of dying? Have you ever asked yourself? Because it's a powerful question. We've got to live full. You've got to live in your gift. You have to do what God placed inside of you every single day in some way. That doesn't mean you have to quit your job or immediately leave a relationship or do something wholesale changing in your life. No, it doesn't mean any of those things. It simply means that you must understand fully and ask yourself, what is it that God has placed inside of me that I can wake up every single day and live in that gift that gives me purpose and provides purpose in this world? Because when you live full, you can trust life. You trust it because it will give you good things. When you have that connection relationship with your faith in God, when you hold yourself accountable, when you keep your word to yourself, and when you live full so that you can then die empty, you trust life. Because joy is then abundant. Joy lives within us. There's not a job, there's not a relationship, there's not a bank account, a car, a home that can give you the joy that trusting life gives. I think that so many of us, we struggle in this world because we're busy trusting the world and not trusting life. I'm going to say it again. We're busy trusting money and trusting bags and trusting things and trusting people and trusting cars and vacations and trusting brand and trusting social media, trusting everything in the world. Yet we don't trust life. I submit to you that if you can just trust life, that your life will begin to change. That if you could just trust life, that you're not going to be happy all the time, but joy will be inside of you. If you can trust life, your life, the lens, it'll shine differently. That the valleys are and will be here. That's life. But connection with your faith, accountability to yourself, and living full in your gift will bring you joy that nothing in the world can bring. That's trusting life, my friends. That's why. That's why we must trust it. Tarsha, yeah, you've been shouting it out. My voice is my gift. You got to use that voice. You got to use that voice. I hope that, and I pray that you don't take this time and these words and these thoughts, I hope you don't receive them and set them aside. I hope that what you do is begin to ask yourself bigger questions. I saw that earlier today, and it struck me, and I loved it. I love this idea of asking bigger questions. Bigger questions. At some point in time, for some reason, us as adults, we stop asking bigger questions. I, I think something subconsciously we think that we have most of the answers, and it's just not the case. I hope you leave today and you ask yourself bigger questions. I hope you ask yourself, am I disconnected from my faith? I hope you ask yourself, do I keep my word to myself? I hope you ask yourself, am I living full in my gift? If I don't know what that gift is, the bigger question is, what is my gift? I want you to ask yourself those questions. I believe that if you can ask yourself those questions, you can begin to seek out and reveal those answers for yourself. You can begin to take a step towards leaving that whole world trust and start leaning into trusting life. I pray that for you. I pray that for you. Thank you, Tarsha. Thank you, Angie. Thank you, anybody else that's on that I can't see. I appreciate you. Vicky is still here. I appreciate everyone. Hey, grab the book. It's a quick read. I think it's around 65 pages, 61, 65 pages, depending on what you have it on, paperback or Kindle. Grab it and share it. And I pray that you begin to lean into life and trusting it. And I thank you. I'll see you soon.